Hey, good evening, everyone. It's Chris Peaks here again. I'm here with State House candidate. Tell us your name because I always botch it and get the last name wrong, so I don't want to get it wrong.
My name's Julie Borrelli, and I'm running for District 40 for the State House of Representatives.
So, tell me a little about your background. You know, where you're from, education, family, what you do for a living now.
Okay, well, I'm originally from South Alabama, a small town called Wagerville, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's in Washington County. I lived there until I graduated high school, and I went and joined the Marines. I did that for about 16 years. I retired. There was a temporary early retirement authority, so they let me retire after 15, but before 20. It's a special program, first time they've done it since the 90s. And so I got to retire out of the Marine Corps, moved to Oxford, Alabama, which is in Calhoun County. And I've been living in that area. I live in White Plains, which is a kind of a suburb of Anniston, Oxford. It's in that area, but it's in the county. Lived there since about 2013. And I'm running for District 40. Again, I'm kind of going a little bit out of order, but I went to California State University, where I graduated in 2004. I did that while I was on active duty. So I've got a bachelor's from there. I've got a master's in HR. I've got a master's in forensic psychology. And I recently, at a ripe old age, have graduated from law school and passed the bar. So currently I have a couple different things I'm doing. I'm the finance director for a municipality here. And I also work for the McCormick firm as an attorney that practices some family law and criminal law.
Very impressive. A Marine. Did you go to OCS to become an officer?
I did. I started out enlisted, so I went to boot camp at Parris Island, and a few years after that, I applied for a commissioning program, and I did go to OCS and the basic school.
So you're a military officer, so you're somebody who knows how to, by God, get things done.
I can, absolutely. And I didn't mention I'm married. I have a husband here, and then I also have 4 boys. So I have to get things done. 3 of them are teens.
And that is the worst age of boys. So that was going to be my next question. Well, let me make it a 2-part question. What motivated you to decide to run for this seat?
So I've always been very interested in politics. I've always followed it very closely. And what I had found is that I hate to use this word, but I was kind of disgusted with what I saw. There was so much going on, and the way that our world, our country has changed, and everybody's so sensitive, and we have to be so careful with everything we say, and just the extremes that are going on. And I got where I didn't want to watch it anymore. So, as I got to a point in my career and in my life where I could do more, I thought, well, you know what? Instead of complaining about it, who better to do something about it? I'm smart, I'm driven, I'm ambitious, and I am tenacious. And I think that kind of the combination of all those things, why shouldn't I be the one that represents our area and represents our communities to help with legislation for the people that are around me? I mean, I know what they want. I know most of them. And I know what's important, and I know what I stand for. So why not?
So I want to touch on something with family, but I guess I'm kind of getting off topic here, but you said something that has always dawned on me. I think it's an interesting question. I don't know if it's because sometimes women feel they have more to prove on certain things, but it seems like when you have a female, and I've seen them in court before, they are tenacious like a pit bull when it comes to defending their clients. Like there was a female, I got in trouble. It was a misdemeanor, and I hired the other lawyer for $1,000 less, and I wish I'd hired her for $3,500 because just listening to her, I just don't know if maybe they feel like because it's been such a man's world for so long that they have more to prove, or maybe they're just they're going after them. But it seems like that in a lot of cases they fight so much harder than that. And I mean, I don't know if that's a question or a statement, but I just wondered what your opinion was on it, because
I don't know if it's that you have something to prove. I have always worked, being in the Marines for so long, that is a male dominated field. And you can't make any excuses. You have to be tough. You have to be able to stand up for yourself, and you have to be able to be strong. Um, I don't look at it as something to prove. I look at it as you don't take anything for granted. You don't assume you're going to be the best. It's something you really have to fight for it. And just even when you're in a room full of people, a lot of times people will try to, especially men, and it's not anything bashing them, but if they're used to being the ones that are going to be heard, they'll speak over you or they'll try to speak for you. And I think that you learn how to balance that to where you're able to say what you want to say, get it across, and stop people from speaking over you and speaking for you. A lot of that comes with demeanor. You have to do it. You have to do it right. You have to be strong. You have to be smart. But that's I think that's one of the reasons that women are like that. It's not necessarily that you got to prove a point, but you just don't take it for granted that you're going to win. You have to earn it.
It's very unfair when I watch a debate and for the candidate, and when a man comes out swinging, he comes out swinging, and when a female attacks back, she's looked at in a derogatory way. I'm not going to use, but the man's
right. I think we both know what you're getting at. For sure.
That's fair, because and don't get me wrong, I'm a conservative with principles, but me personally, I liked Hillary Clinton, and the stuff I just said there was something about her I liked, and and she would fight back, and every time she fought back, she got labeled that, and I guess that was bringing me to my next question is, I've noticed in elections that for some reason, and again, I don't mean something like this sounds sexist, but it seems like that sometimes female voters are intimidated by a strong female, and it looks like they would be more happy to have a strong female leader representing them instead of going with the male candidate who's just going to be for the males. I've never figured that out, and I don't know why that takes place. I mean, do you have an opinion on that?
My opinion is that for me personally, it's not that I've ever not supported female candidates. We haven't had a lot of strong. I'm a Republican, so we've not had a lot of female Republican candidates that have gotten very far. Most of the ones that are strong are going to be your Democrat candidates, and that's been my problem, is that I don't necessarily support the things that they support. Though it would be great if we had a strong female candidate that represented what my beliefs are.
I mean, and I've seen a few that I liked, like in 2008. I thought, when Bush or McCain thought that he had to have a woman, why didn't he nominate Kay Bailey Hutchinson from Texas? I mean, I would have thought that would have been a lot better candidate than what he got. I mean, I think that when I look at the percentages, that women are so underrepresented in politics, and you've heard the story that we all had, a woman's touch. Sometimes, need the female perspective instead of when you got the good old boys in there going at each other's throat. I just think that we need more of that in politics.
Yeah, I think we do. And I think we're starting to see that. I know that I met with someone about 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about the turnover in the state house in this next election there, and they're expecting there will be at least a 25% turnover just for people that aren't running again. And I think that that's representative of the change that we're trying to push, just new generation, new views, and a lot more women are going into these roles.
Well, okay, so that brings me to the question I wanted to ask you. How tough is it for a mother raising 4 boys? It's got to be easy to run a political campaign.
It's really tough. One thing I have got, my boys are 8, 13, 14, 15. What it has took is everybody my husband, my mother-in-law, my mom, my sister, my friend, they help me. One of my boys is he'll be 16 soon, and he'll be able to help as far as going to school and back, because they're all in sports. And so they do a lot of practices. They're after a lot during school. But what I find, it just takes a lot of juggling. I have to plan very well. I have to know exactly where they're going to be, when they're going to be there, who needs to pick them up, when they need to pick them up. If I can't do it, who can? And it might mean going to a basketball game and having my iPad on my lap and emailing people in the breaks. And I mean, it's something that you just have to, you do what you have to do, and you make sure you have a strong team. And I've made sure that I have that strong team set up so that I have people I can depend upon if I need it. But it does planning. Planning is key. I cannot just leave anything open. Everything has to be scheduled and ready to go for us to make it work.
So was there any key issue? She said, enough's enough. I'm not taking this anymore. Something's got to be done in this thing.
Oh, there are a couple things. One of the one people talk about a lot right now has to do with vaccine mandates. And I don't necessarily want to go too deeply into that, because I know everybody talks about that. But that's one thing. Another thing had to do with gun rights, with Second Amendment stuff. I'm a constitutional carry believer.
My
And then the third thing is that I thought was really big was, it's a tough topic, but when you're talking about transgender students, the males being able to compete with female sports, just with having kids that are athletes, that's another one that I think is a very big deal, especially here.
Before you bring that up, I got aggravated at the legislature because last session they spent all their time working on that bill. I knew it wasn't going to be a problem, but I've already made the statement several times. I'm not part of the cancel culture movement. I don't care what you identify yourself with. You're born with female parts and you're born with male parts. You can identify with whatever you want. You're a man or you're a woman. So then I identify myself as a 65-year-old retired CEO executive. Give me my pension.
Right. You can't pick and choose everything.
I don't know where this has popped out at. A professor, a friend of mine, told me, he said this started coming 25 years ago, and he taught in New York City. You can no longer call them him, his, her, they, she, and we've got to a problem. We're changing gender roles. I mean, this is not good for anybody involved, and these Democrats, in one of the bills they passed in this last session, they did a bathroom bill about transgenders using the same bathrooms. What's going to happen? And I know it's going, and it's going to as well as I do. The first time there's a sexual assault that takes place in one of those bathrooms.
Yeah.
And it's just, and it's not like I'm not against. I mean, I have friends that are gay. They don't bother me or anything else, and their lives, and you never even know it. But this stuff where they are pushing this LGBT agenda down our throats, that you have to accept this. I mean, something's got to be done.
Well, the thing with the schools and the sports, I told you I have boys in sports. The thing is it's unfair. I mean, you have women, different organizations fought for so long to have women's sports so that they can compete on an equal playing field. And then now what you have is these transgender students. And I'm not even going down the rabbit hole of whether or not it's good, bad, or I am merely talking about fairness here. You can't have someone that's biological male competing with biological females. You're not the same. I mean, we can say all day that women and men are the same, but physically we are not the same. I'm not going to be as strong as most males, no matter how much I work out, no matter how strong I am. We're different. We're just physiologically different. We're not the same. So it's not fair to have those girls out there competing with those boys. I mean, you had even, it was a couple of years ago when you had with MMA and Fallon Fox. And I mean, people can get killed because you have these these men identifying as women trying to compete in women's sports. It's killing the sport. It's killing athletics. You got these males that are identifying as females competing in, track and field. Well, it's not fair. Women aren't going to run the same time that men do. It's just not right. And it's damaging these sports, and it's terrible, I think.
I don't know how they're allowing that, because you identify that, and it's just driving me crazy. Touched on that. I mean, so another issue I want to go into. We control the House, the legislature, and both branches, the courts. How come we can't get some legislation passed that can help the state of Alabama?
Well, I think it's just you have a lot of people that will say they're one way or the other. They'll say they're Republican or say they're Democrat, and they're really not. Because in the state of Alabama, it's hard to get elected if you're not a Republican. It's not impossible, but it's hard. So if you're going to run, even if someone that leans left, they almost have to run as a Republican. So then you have people that get in office that aren't necessarily representative of what their party is, or that's one thing. Another thing would be people that are real tied in with different special interest groups, that they're voting a certain way for money. That's another issue that we have. And then a third issue is that there are so many strap hangers on these bills that bills they're not necessarily for just what they're sent up for. It may be just like in the federal government, it may be a bill that's talking about a gas tax, but it may have 15 different things hanging on to it that stops other people from voting for it. It's really just there's a number of things that could come into play in this.
I'm so enraged now, like with that gas tax they passed. It's going up every year, and this is the thing that I've had several Republican candidates that I've talked to that are conservative candidates, and they have so much agreed that the time has come. Our drug laws in the state are so draconian. We are locking people up in prison for marijuana and paying $15,000 a year to house and support these people. When is the time going to come that it's regulated like tobacco and alcohol, where you can go buy a pack of 20 joints and pay $40 for it, and you got a $20 pack tax on it? I could fund anything you wanted in the state. I mean, there's pot smokers everywhere. I mean, I don't smoke pot, but I know plenty of people who do. And if you tax that, I mean, that would be so much money coming in the coffers. Plus, you would cut down on people in prison. And it just seems like a win-win situation.
Well, you'd think so, but there's a lot more to it than that. One thing is, I believe I saw a report, and I think it was yesterday, and it said that right now the number one cause of death, and I think I'm quoting this correctly, the number one cause of death for adults 19 to 45 is fentanyl, and most of that fentanyl comes in this drug trade. So that's one issue that definitely needs to be, we need to deal with. It's a slippery slope, though. It's hard when you talk about regulating that, or when you talk about legalizing that, it's a very difficult thing to do, because if it was fixed that easily, then the states that have already done this, they would have been fixed already, and they're not. They're experiencing problems. They're experiencing difficulties. It's definitely not what they thought it was going to be, and so that's kind of like the lottery. People talk about letting the lottery in and how much it's going to help education and all this money that goes for education. Yet those states that have the lottery, their education systems have not really improved all that much since they brought the lottery in. So,
I know I don't know what it is now, but I know Georgia, it improved so much in some of those states. But the problem that I have with the lottery is, going back with Governor Siegelman and the ones that they've introduced, I remember they had a commercial. But you remember all the lottery was supposed to go to education, right? And then lottery, it was like a pyramid scheme, and it went all the way down there, and only like 5 or 10% was going to uh, education. And I remember one of the
Right.
commercials, they said, was a lottery,
Mm-hmm.
not this. And I voted against that lottery for that simple reason. It's like, this is not what you promised every kid
No.
in education. And now you're just sticking in the general fund, or your cronies can spend it however they want.
Right. Yeah, and that's tricky too, because they can make promises that it's going to go towards education, not the general fund, and then once it gets in, I mean, that can always be changed. You know, they can change their mind later and rewrite where it goes. And a lot of times that happens with just the creep, you know, general fund creep. I've never used that before, but that's really kind of what can happen. Just more and more of it can go there.
When people realize, see, I mean, and I don't want to. Well, I mean, well, yeah, I guess I do. I mean, our average voter in Alabama, that they look and they say, okay, R beside their name, and they don't keep up with what kind of candidate it is, or even know what they're doing down there.
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
looking at missing money, and I'm like, there's $200 million missing from the first round of COVID money. The prison money's missing. We got $800 million missing from the budget we got listed. So we got all this money that's missing, and who is the hell accountable for this? I called the state treasurer's office. They tell me, they said, well, you need to call the state auditor's office. So I called the state auditor's office. Well, you need to call the state finance office. So, well, you need to call the state comptroller's office. And I said, who? I said, wait, who is in charge of this? Is there not one person in charge of a checkbook that is accounting for what all our tax dollars are spent?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're robbing us blind.
Yeah, you know, and that's the information you should be able to find out. They get audited, and I don't know how often the state does. I know at the city that I work for, we audit every year, and so I would think that the state would do the same. It's a lot of times it's that the money, it might go somewhere, but it can go to other things that are kind of connected to it as well. So like, and I'm just using this as an example. If money was going to the prisons, you might see part of it going to a prison and part of it going to, you know, a water department or a sewer department or a road department, because they're all connected. So I'm not saying the money's not missing, but there's a lot of different places it could go to get the same end result, because there's more to it than just that building, you know.
Okay. I have an interesting question for you that I've seen here over the last few years, and I'm just going to be shoot straight with you. I mean, I've been around a lot of politicians, and I know how things work. You know, as Jackson said, to the victor belongs the spoils. But I've seen here recently over my lifetime many what I consider political prosecutions where they go to drop in the bucket to what I've heard of other people doing down there. What is it that makes the government particularly locked on to one person?
Um, it's almost like a popularity contest. If the government or the media, depends on how much media they're getting. If it's the message they want to send or don't want to send, they may lock onto that person to make an example of them, or because they need somebody to take the fall for whatever's going on to take the. It's kind of like a redirect. Like, if you pay attention to that guy, you won't look at what's going on over here behind the curtain. So I think that's a lot of it. Is you get one person that does something wrong, and you let them take the heat for a while, and it just kind of takes the attention away from everything else that's going on.
Well, as I say, going back to um, um, Governor Hunt, and then Governor Siegelman, and Larry Langford. I mean, what he did, and uh, um, um, you know, Bentley and his little thing. I mean, it just seems like they lock onto you, and they're going to make an example out of you. And
yeah,
and they made their own. You know, because let's face it, you could indict everybody in the legislature, in the House, in the Senate. I mean, everybody down there, they can find something on.
well, Governor Bentley is a good example, because that happened around the same time that, you know, that Me Too movement and all the other issues and allegations that were coming out in the federal government, and then that gave them, you know, that kind of gave them something to latch onto, and even for the Republican Party to latch onto and say, hey, look, we're doing this too. We're taking care of this guy. He did this. He wasn't supposed to do it. He's an example. Look at what we're doing, and see, we will elect a Democrat. Now the Democrat didn't stay in office, but he ended up going into office. And it was just, it's that kind of example. It's not that he did anything that 100 other people didn't do. It's just that he's the one that the pit bulls got their teeth sunk into, and so he's the one that he went down for it.
I kind of think you got a raw deal on it, and and I want to touch on something that's before I go to this. Personally, I don't care what somebody's sexual orientation is, but for the life of me, I don't understand what Patricia Todd's motive is to make those accusations against Governor Ivey as she's leaving office. It was almost like sour grapes because Governor Ivey became governor, and I don't know what she had. She run her career of it, and I felt no sympathy for making those accusations that she did. I thought that was just about as low as it was.
I think what. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just thought it was about as low as you go. Like I said, I cared nothing about Governor Ivey's sexual preference.
Yeah, right. Well, I think it's that there was no certainty that Governor Ivey wasn't going to run again, and I mean, she is going to run again, but I think it's a way for people to try to scare her out of running, or to try to make it harder for her to run again, regardless of whether or not you like her. People, hear about the accusations and they think about them whenever they go to vote, whether or not they mean to.
Well, one thing for being around is females are more accepted than males with that sexual orientation. I've heard jokes at the state house about Governor Ivey being one of the boys. I don't think that hurts her. I see Ivey, when I look at Governor Ivey, I see her as your grandmother, and I think these people who are running against her, if they go after her, and they go after, it's going to totally backfire because they're going to see their grandmother up there, and nobody wants to see their grandmother getting yelled
at. No.
And and like I said, I personally I personally like Governor Ivey. So I was going to ask you something about her, and I said I want to touch on that, and I forgot what it was. With Todd and something in the legislature, and it's not really important. And come back to that. If you were elected, I know you said that you liked you named some things you said constitutional carry, which I'm for. What would you? I mean, first of all, do you have any idea what the demographics are as far as men to women, race?
I don't know what they are right now. We were just talking about this the other day, but I can't remember what the numbers of them are. I know it's low. There's not nearly as many women as men, but I'm not sure.
I mean, Aniston, when the military base goes, it just totally killed that. What would you do? What kind of bills would you introduce that will help? First, start with your constituents to help their level of living.
Okay, so I mean, there's your, I would definitely get involved in the ones that are already there, and a lot of the things that we talk about is stuff that's already being worked on and stuff that's already being built. One of the things that I think is important that not as much attention has been on has to do with education. I mean, everybody talks about education because we're so far behind in the state of Alabama in education. We rank anywhere between 47th to 50th, depending on which poll you look at. But one of the things people don't talk about too much, but that has been declared a crisis in the state, is children's mental health. And I know there's some programs right now where they've been putting social workers in schools kind of as a test to see how it works and how it helps. And I think there needs to be legislation passed that keeps those social workers in the schools, keeps them there all the time, and helps deal with mental health problems with children. The thing is being schools, childhood, the way that children mature, all of that has changed since we were in school. Just access to the internet, electronics. having phones all the time, having access to different just technology that we didn't have. At least I say in my age group, we didn't have when we were, when I was growing up. It's changed these kids. It's changed how fast they mature. It changes how they interact socially with each other, and it changes the things they have to deal with. And I think also, when I was growing up, I'm not going to say when that was, but quite a few years ago, you didn't hear about children's mental health. People thought that if we were just talking about this the other day, I was talking about it with a friend. People didn't think that children's feelings really mattered all that much because they're just kids. They don't, that depression's not real. They're just kids. That it's okay if you say this to them or that to them because they're just kids. But the reality is that they go through depression. They go through different mental issues that people are really just starting to understand. And I think that it would be important to introduce something to help deal with some of the mental health issues we have in school, which might in turn help increase the productivity in school, increase graduation rates, increase, and that all, that snowballs into increased, college or trade school or whatever profession, which increases the standard of living. I mean, it's all related to each other. But I do think a bill that would require some type of mental health training for professionals that are in schools, each and every school that's out there, would be important.
You think that would be a piece of legislation that would help bring your constituents up to a level they can
I think that it would help our whole state. I mean, my constituents, yes, and there's good schools in my district. We have pretty good schools, but all schools can benefit from this because ultimately, even though I'm elected for the constituents in my district, we represent everybody in the state of Alabama, and that's who we pass legislation for.
I've got a quick question with that because you brought it up, and I don't understand what happened here. We were the Pittsburgh of the South. We had high-paying jobs. I mean, how can we get these still jobs back here where people are making $30 an hour? I mean, you drive through Birmingham, and it's just like a ghost town. You see all these great paying jobs, they're gone.
Well, some of that has to do with just the industrial jobs, a lot of the factory jobs, as those companies have become more technologically advanced, it decreases the number of employees you need for those. I think it's also important that we try to avoid sending so many of those jobs overseas. And, I think with the Trump administration, that's one of the things they were trying to do is try to make it to where it was a little bit more expensive for these companies to send these jobs overseas so that they could keep the jobs here in the United States. And I think that is one thing that would have been critical in keeping those jobs, especially in this area, because there's so many automotive manufacturers. We've got Honda here, and we've got all those different organizations. We just have to keep the jobs here and stop sending them overseas.
When President Clinton signed NAFTA, during that time, 60,000 factories in the United States have closed. I mean, that's over 1,000 in a state. I mean, it's destroyed the industrial manufacturing base of this country. And right now we're stuck. I mean, the service industry is, one of your top leading jobs. We have nothing, maybe some technology. I was thinking in Huntsville, would be a place where we could look at to try to improve our state.
Yeah. Well, one of the things our state has, we've got plenty of land. We've got plenty of resources. We just got to make businesses want to come here and give them reasons to come here. We can do that through different incentives. We can do it through tax incentives. We can do it through, there's a multitude of different ways. But even locally in my district, I mean, we had a foundry closed down. We've had other businesses like in Jacksonville that have closed down. Now we have a few more that are starting to consider coming in. But I think we just have to make sure, our governments just need to be more proactive in making these companies want to stay here and want to provide these jobs in these locations. Some other states do it better. And if they are more enticing, and it's a better financial decision for those companies to leave, they do it. So we got to make them want to stay here. We got to give them a reason to want to stay here. Do what we can, give them, incentivize them if we have to.
When Governor Folsom, well, Governor Hunt needs to get some credit for this because he was really the one that got it started. But when Governor Folsom finally signed it, he gave Mercedes like a 20 or 25-year tax break, and everybody went crazy. And I thought, who cares? You're bringing in $40 an hour job.
And those people are going to spend money.
Let's do this right here. If we have to give them a 50-year tax break or something like that, and then get something in here, work for the people. And we see nothing going on. Now, we have a session coming up. We'll see how things go with that. We have a governor's race. I'm surprised to see there's not more big names in that Senate race. But then when I started noticing all this missing money and stuff. But anyway, we'll touch back on her for a minute. Do you think she could be in trouble?
I'm sorry, you kind of cut out for a second.
So we touched on Governor Ivey a while ago, and I like Governor Ivey.
Do I think Governor Ivey could be in trouble?
Well, and here's the numbers for, and I'm a numbers guy. I mean, if you want me to look at, that's my thing. And I'm looking at the numbers: 87% approval ratings, third populous governor in the nation, but only 43% said they were voting for, and 34% are undecided. Those were eyebrows-raising numbers to me.
Yeah. I think that she has a good chance. And the reason why is because the other, I know there at least, I don't know all the candidates. I know there's at least 3. And I know the other 2 candidates that I know of was Lindy Blanchard and who's the general? There's a guy running. They're a pretty big name, but they're pretty strong. And so I think there might be enough people that vote on her just as the incumbent, and if they're both split up, she's got a good chance. Alabama's a runoff state, so I would imagine she might end up in a runoff, and if that's the case, it's hard to say. It's hard to say who's going to win in that case.
Yeah, in the runoff, she'll be in trouble. 80%, unless they came out with something for Alabama voters to vote against her. I don't see.
Age is going to hurt her, I think, because she's older, and that's a little bit tougher. But I don't know. I see that. I think that she might get it. She might make it.
Yeah, I think she will. I mean, and when you mentioned on age, I thought the first time when she ran, I said she'll run her one term and enjoy it, and then she'll sit out, and then
she didn't.
You can see that. I'm not taking a shot on her, but when somebody gets to that age, you just don't have it anymore. And Governor Ivey just doesn't have the stamina or physical to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I heard from an insider that back the mask mandate and everything, that the Lanesworth was getting ready to challenge her, and some of the party leaders said, challenge her if you want to, but you do this and you're done in politics.
Right. Yeah, I've been told she's pretty strong-armed. Like, you don't really mess with her. You mess with her, you're done.
Me and a friend was talking about that other night. Yeah, she looks like this sweet across that woman, and
you're out. That's a death sentence in politics.
The Senate race. I'm looking at Katie Britt and Mo Brooks, and being a conservative, I consider myself a conservative Republican, but I look at these 2 candidates, and as I want to say progressive Republican, somebody wants to see the state move forward, I don't see these two candidates that I want.
Yeah, I don't see that anybody else is going to come into it. Katie Britt seems to be doing a pretty good job. That's all I see. I mean, I see her signs everywhere. I'm seeing her. I'm just seeing her name everywhere I go. So if people that don't know, they're seeing it, and that's the name they're going to, in this area, that's the name that they're going to see.
When most up there, not going to argue with the Trump people who think points are stolen, but
Yeah.
says, we're going up here to kick ass, and I'm thinking this is our senator from Alabama standing up there, and I'm like, this is what we have to offer. And I think some of the politicians in the state, I think Katie Britt was one of Shelby's age, and I actually like her. So hopefully she's just running to the right to get the nomination. That, but yeah, I wanted to go back because now I remembered when you talked about Senator Jones. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the Baxley Granite race. Well, in '86, Bill Baxley and Charlie Graddick was in this brutal runoff for governor. Well, it was a closed primary system, and Republicans were not allowed to vote in the Alabama Democratic runoff. But Charlie Graddick starts urging Republicans to cross over and vote for him. Well, in those days, you had 30,000 voters voted in the Republican primary. They crossed over and they defeated, and Baxley got defeated by 8,000 votes. And I love Bill Baxley. We're still good friends to this day. I was supposed to be the first year. Baxley challenges the election, and they are locked in a court battle. And it goes back and forth. Finally, the Supreme Court rules that the votes were illegal, and for the Republican Party to either name Baxley the nominee or to hold another runoff. So the executive committee goes behind the closed doors, and Al Pierce says, guys, we're making a huge mistake. And they stripped Graddick of the nomination and gave it to Baxley. And the whole state of Alabama was enraged. My grandfather, born in 1930, who had never voted Republican, well, except for Reagan, he didn't care, nothing you could tell him, guy hunt. And back in those days, the Democrat won by 20% of the vote. Well, Guy Hunt won by 16%. Everybody woke up the next day and Guy Hunt. Well, the Democrat, talking about those political prosecutions. Well, the Democrats didn't learn their election lesson. They can't stand that Hunt gets elected governor, so they start an investigation and get a conviction and remove from office. It happens in '94. They'll get swept out again. So Alabama voters, like with that Luther Strange, and they don't like being told what to do. And when they think there's some shenanigans, they're going to come out strong. They're going to come out swinging. Now, the constitutional carry, they have a good chance to pass. The lottery, we'll see again. Do you think, in your opinion, anything's going to get done, or is it just going to be the same thing?
I think it's going to be the same thing. I don't think they're going to do anything major until after this next election.
You go in your first.
That's just my opinion. That's.
Give me some great answer. You go in your first day. The newly representing. Are you going to sit back and kind of watch, or do you think you're going in there? I'm going to make my mark, because I think
what I do when I go in there, the first thing I want to do is familiarize myself with everything that we have going on. I need to know. I mean, they're going to take me through, and I'll have to learn what I'm doing and how to do it. But I want to familiarize myself completely with the bills that we have that have been being worked in these committees, the things that we can build upon that are already there. Because I don't want to redo the work that's already been done. That's a waste of time. But then once I get past that, then I do see myself going ahead and starting to get involved and try to create the legislation that I think needs to be created. I think you go in swinging. After a little research, then you go in swinging. That's what I would be put in there for. I wouldn't be put in there to sit still, to sit back and to watch everybody else, do things. That's too many people have been doing that. They've just been sitting there watching, voting occasionally, maybe not reading the bills they vote on for too long.
Your personality strikes me as somebody who's not going to sit there and let things just go by down there.
Right.
I love to say. So how many people is I remember that the other question I wanted to ask you. Your stance on abortion.
Abortion is very tricky. I'm pro-life. I've always been pro-life. I do realize there are times when there would be exceptions for that. Um, rape, that's one of them. If they know that the child is not going to be viable,
I agree.
mother's health. There's different exceptions, but in general, I would say I'm pro-life, and I'm absolutely against later term abortions. I mean, if we are going to allow abortions early on, and I don't support that, but if you are going to do it, I mean, the late term abortion stuff makes me sick.
When I read how that was carried out, I thought every one of them should have been criminally prosecuted at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way I could go along with that is if it came down to endangerment of the mother's life. Again, you're playing God in that situation. You, you know, that's a tough call. Um, and that is an important thing in the state. I mean, are you a Christian conservative voter, or do you believe more of a moderate church and stance role?
I would say I do. While I do believe in separation of church and state, I would consider myself more of a conservative. That would probably vote in line of the way the Christian views that are generally associated with that side. I don't know if that answers your question for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, I consider myself the same way, but the same way what you said, I would probably vote in line with them. But I believe in the separation of church and state. I'm not going there, right, thumping the Bible
No.
over a bill like that because too many hot button bills already.
Right. Yeah, and I believe that the government should represent all people, not just the people that believe the way that I believe. So I think you have to have a realistic view of the entire state with for this role, not just a certain view, which is why I say that I would vote in line with what your Christian conservative views, but also I do think that separation needs to be there because it's a government for everybody.
Why is it that when I was a kid coming up, Democrats and Republicans, they were friends. They went out to eat together. They went to the bar and had a drink. They would visit each other. And now there's so much hatred.
Yeah, it's really sad if you think about it. I think a lot of that has to do with the way the media portrays each side. And it didn't start out that way. It was progressive. It progressively got worse and worse. You had where everybody, most people were somewhere in the middle. You might lean right or lean left. And then as time's gone on and the media has, you've got media outlets that are mostly conservative or mostly liberal, and they villainize the other side to the point where now there's this big divide where there's so many fewer, at least in the media, which is what a lot of the people believe. They believe what they hear. There's such a divide between the conservative and liberals now that it's almost a bad word to say that you're trying to to meet in the middle somewhere.
One thing that kills me is when people say something about, "Oh, I bet you watch Fox News." Well, actually, I don't watch any mainstream news, but I'm thinking, you're saying something about Fox News, but you've got two almost socialist networks over there pushing the propaganda. And you're propaganda. And anytime a story breaks, like Nick Sandlin, they showed just a few seconds of the commercial. You didn't show the whole clip. You don't show the whole clip. This cancel generation that we have that is developed. I don't know where it's popped up until a few years ago. And I start hearing systematic racism, and somebody told me you was born with white privilege. I said, well, where can I go buy that at? Because I haven't found it in the store. But then this critical race theory popped up, and some guy when Governor Ivey signed it, banning it. He didn't even know the definition of a theory, and I had to explain to him. I could say that the sun was actually the Earth, and that was my theory. And why are we teaching this in schools now?
I think it's being taught. It's almost like it's like, I don't really want to say popularity, but it's kind of just a trend, and it's a way for a group to try to make another group feel bad, to try to make them. it's like you want them to think differently, but you do it in a way that just tries to make them think that they're bad. And I mean, these kids are not. I don't. The critical race theory, it really just kind of blows my mind because I just think that it's trying to villainize one group of people for the sake of another, and that's the whole. How do you try to fight racism with racism? And that's really kind of what it comes down to.
Exactly what it is. And one thing, you said something that just hits so hard, hits so close to home. I'm a big Civil War buff. I guess you've probably seen that on the channel, interviews and stuff like that. But you know, and you never see my conversations. We're not talking about slavery thing and issues. Being a military man, I love the battles and tactics and stuff like that. So that's what we started. There has been, and I don't know when it really started, a revisionism that is where they've rewritten about Lee was a horrible general, the Confederates a horrible general, and they were trying to make Southerners be ashamed of the fact that their forefathers fought for the Confederacy. And when people were, telling me that, you're just a lost cause racist, and then I have a comment back that I'm not going to say, but I'm not going to apologize that my ancestors fought for the Confederacy, that I have 2 pictures of General Lee hanging on my wall, and that I own a Confederate battle flag that I keep in my bedroom. I mean, I'm just not going to apologize that my family fought in the war, and I think that if other people would stop going along with this, then we can stop a lot of it.
Yeah, and that's key because it's not just individuals. You have, that's apparent. You have governments that are removing, they're removing monuments regularly. I mean, they're paying fines to the state of Alabama because they're trying to rewrite history and trying to change it to where everyone thinks that anyone that was involved in the Civil War was bad. I mean, and that's just. It's happening. It's happening across the state. It's happening in, many cities, many very close to where we are right now. And it's just crazy that we're trying to rewrite history.
In New York City a few weeks ago, they took down a statue of Thomas Jefferson because he was a slave owner. I said, okay, where are we going to start now? Are we going to take down Washington?
Mm-hmm.
Going to take
next step.
We're going to take King James out of the Bible because he owned slaves. Slavery, I'm not defending slavery, don't get me wrong. It's been around time, but cancel culture is trying to blame it on, some people that lived for 200 years in the 1960s. You guys can't have it like that. It's like that we're trying to push it down our throats. So when you enter office, what do you think is the most important, is the most pressing issue that Alabama has to address first?
I'm going to go back to the education. I think we've got to get that figured out. We've got to find a way to get us out of the bottom for education. We're losing. There are probably a lot more people that would move here, that the valuable people that are scared to put their kids in our schools because they're we have some good schools, but we are ranked very low. I think that we've got to kind of fix that, and we've got to try to get a grip on our prisons, which that's one of the things they've been working on right now. So we'll see how far they get. But education, prisons, those are big things that I think need to be addressed right away.
I knew that's what made me think of the question because I had a great interview with mayoral candidate Chris Woods. Great man, he ran for mayor twice, and I had a conversation with him, and I didn't know they'd done it away with, but he wanted to bring back a mandatory trade school in Birmingham City where the students were made to learn 2 trades. So when they came out of school, they had 2 trades where they could go make $35 as a plumber and start looking at why poverty leads to what? Crime? Well, if you've got a guy making $40 an hour, you're not going to have if you got this guy making $70 an hour at McDonald's.
Yeah.
And I was talking in this conversation with somebody the other night, and he wanted all school loans wiped out, and I said, no, absolutely not. You know, you borrowed the money, you pay it back.
Right.
He had a shot. He said about an electrician, and I said, well, you know what? I'd rather have that electrician that went to the trade school making $75,000 a year in philosophy, sitting down at Starbucks complaining about capitalism.
Yeah, one of the things that I think would that's important in that discussion is a lot of our schools do have trade schools. Now they're not required, but they have them, and most of the schools do have them in some county, in some area where they can go and they can learn whatever the trade is that they want to. You know, they offer a lot more now than they did years ago, but I also think that there. I told you that I was in the Marines, and I don't think I said, but I was stationed. My first main duty station after training was in California. And I'll tell you one thing, there's a lot of things California does wrong, but one thing that it blew my mind was that I enrolled in junior college there, which, they also have technical schools, and they're going to have your trade schools there. I enrolled there after going to school here in Alabama for 2 years. I went to Faulkner State, which is now Coastal Community College, I think, in Bay Minette. But I enrolled in school there, and it was so cheap. I paid for it. I still paid for it. It wasn't free, but it was so cheap that anybody that wanted to go to college, to a trade school, they could do it. It's a lot more now, but at the time, this was in late 90s, early 2000s, probably. It was like $11 a credit then. So I mean, I could go a semester of school for less than like $200 a semester. It's probably way more than that now, but it's still affordable. It was affordable to where you didn't have to take out student loans. You could go to school. You could go to that trade school. You don't have to go to a university, but you can learn a trade, and it was reasonable. And so it was amazing to me, because that same school here in Alabama, it was I want to say it was like $2,000 a semester to go to the same type of school. So I do think that maybe instead of trying to push for student loan forgiveness, maybe we just make trade school more affordable, so that the ones that want to go can, so they don't have to take out student loans, so that they can go learn how to do something, how to support their family, without having to get a 4-year degree.
Some of these people are going to think, I'm too good to go work as an auto mechanic. I'm not good. There's a lot of, I know a lot of kids have that. I'm too good to work for that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you're hungry, you wouldn't. And I want to touch on one thing too. I mean, I got through on a podcast one night, and I wish they had gave me about 20 minutes to, refresh my memory on Governor Wallace. And so I told the unknown story of George Wallace, and I told about 58 how he was the NAACP candidate that was endorsed by them, and he was the integration candidate, and then of course he changed, and I said, I started naming out the trade schools and everything, and I said, they just want to take his name off UAB, and I said, look, if it wasn't for UAB, Governor Wallace, UAB would not be here. I said, and they're talking about wanting to take his name off the trade school. I said, he was the Trade School Act. I said, and besides, do you think these 18-year-old kids know who George Wallace was today?
Yeah.
It's just driving me crazy. I mean, if it was not for Wallace with the Trade School Act, I mean, how many kids would not have ever went to school? And
right.
It's just a shame that's what we got. And yeah, sorry to go off the tangent on that. So, what do you? So you told me that about the children, and I really like that idea. But what do you hope to accomplish in 4 years when you look back at what this state is now?
I would like to see, just talking more about education, I would like to see our schools start to increase, ratings, increase our education, the levels, the stuff that we're taught, increase our reading levels for the lower grades. I would like to see underperforming schools held to a higher standard. That's one of the things that's one of the trickiest things as far as schools, when you have failing schools that are allowed to continue to fail. I want them held accountable. I mean, we help them to a certain point, but at a certain point, I think there needs to be something in place that says, if you don't fix your school, this is what's going to happen. I do think that would be very important to have something like that. So I would like to see that. And then I would like to see, I mean, I think by the time that my term is over, we'll be somewhere with regards to lottery, whether or not we let the people vote on it, whether or not it's voted upon in, in Congress or whatever. I think we'll be somewhere with that. And then I think, that Second Amendment, the constitutional carry, I would like to see that. That's some of the main things that I would want to see after that first term.
Yeah,
and there are a lot of other things, but those things are, I think, the ones that I think something can be done. They don't take 12 years to do.
Now, one thing that people are ignoring, and I think it's very important. When is our legislature going to try to focus some money on Medicaid to fund some of these local hospitals? Because I was watching something else out there. We're having a huge shortage of dentists in rural counties where people will have no dental care.
Well, that's one of the things that, there's really not an excuse for some of these areas to do something with regards to better access to medical care, because when different cities got this Rescue Act money, that's one of the authorized uses for it. They can help supplement or build a clinic or do whatever they got to do to make it easier. I know in the city I work for, that is one of the things that we have money set aside for. We have I want to say it's like $275,000 set aside to try to put together a clinic. There are other areas that are matching the funds that we're putting in there, but a clinic in one of the underserved communities. And I don't see a reason why more small governments couldn't do that. They did receive some funds. And then, we don't know what this next infrastructure bill is going to look like. Who knows what it's going to have in it, but we definitely had the ability to do some of that with the Rescue Act and the CARES money.
We're going to have to save for another time, because I broke it down, and I'm looking where $30 million it went to the municipalities, and $10 million they've only received, $250 million with the county, and they still $200 million that went to them. And
well, we've only received, I know with my city and with most of them, it's going to be something similar. We received the first half up front, and then you have to have that allocated, and then a year later you can receive the second half if you have that allocated, and then we have until, I want to say, 2024 to spend it. I think it may be even later than that. I don't have my notes in front of me, but they have quite some time to spend this money. And what they are scared of, though, right now is that they're going to spend it wrong, and that the feds are going to come back and take it. That is a real fear.
I'm looking at this money, how it was allocated, and I'm just looking at it as, I ain't trying to find the budget director, everything, and I'm looking, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for education, but I'm seeing money spent at this funding to school, this funding to school, this funding to school, and then I'm reading about these stipends that got given to teachers who got paid for being a year off, and I'm like, why did we waste that money to pay them for another year to sit at home? I mean, and then I seen that Governor Ivey, she had one of her things was a $40 million education discretionary fund. I said, what does that mean? You're just going to spend the money however you see fit? And that
pretty much.
A funny story. I'll tell you. I was friends with very good friends with a city councilman, and back in 2009, when Langford got convicted, Langford said out there, he said, "Go ahead and build the stadium. We've raised your taxes. We've got the $1 billion." He said, "There's no reason it can't be built." He said, "Build the stadium." Well, of course, the stadium never got built. So I was asking a couple weeks ago when the councilman was lunch one day. I said, "Hey, what happened to that $1 billion?" He said, what $1 billion? The $1 billion that they raised for the stadium. I said, they had the money. He goes, those monies were allocated for the project. Okay. He said, once the project was canceled, The money was then redistributed back into the councilman's district. I said, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the councilman decided where the money was best relocated to help their citizens. I said, so what happened to the $1 billion? I said, y'all just stole it? I mean, it just made no sense. And you know, and I don't know, you know, how much. I wish I had my notebook here in front of me because I'd started going down this and looking it up, and I was at $175,000 missing from the Birmingham Parking Authority, $500,000 missing from the commit. You would not believe the astronomical. That's why I guess any taxes until we stop. And government accountability has got to be something that's done. So,
yeah.
When did you actually make the decision to do this?
I think, you know, I toyed with it about probably around February, sometime in there is when I started really thinking about it, really thinking seriously about it. And then I kind of made the decision probably in April sometime. I think I announced in May that I was going to be running. And so I was the earliest one that came out for this seat. And it wasn't too long after is when I had one other candidate, and it's just been us for quite some time. And then recently there's been a couple other candidates that have jumped in here in the last couple of weeks. So I've been out there the longest for sure.
So there's no incumbent that you're facing?
No, the prior person in that seat, well, the one that's in there now, his name's Coven Brown, K.L. Brown, and he is not going to seek re-election.
Okay.
I think he did 3 terms.
Just curious, 5, how many men, how many women?
Right now there are 3 men and 2 women.
All white, any blacks?
All white. They're all white.
And how many how much of a percentage are you going to win by in the primary, avoiding the runoff?
How many what?
What's your percentage going to be? You know, when you avoid
you gotta have over 50% to avoid a runoff. It's probably going to be a runoff with 5 candidates.
I understand what it costs to be runoff, but I asked you, I said, what percentage of the vote are you going to get when you avoid this runoff?
It's like 55.
Yeah, I don't know the other people then. I've not talked to them. I've been very impressed with the way you handle yourself. You speak directly. You speak you speak with a sense of authority with somebody who knows what they're talking about. Somebody with conviction. And you spoke directly to me as you got your point across. I was very impressed. As I've been going down through this, I've been putting together a list of candidates that I want. That I'm going to put on this community page that when we stand here, hey, these are the guys that I want. You know, I thank you for coming on tonight, and it's been great talking to you. And I'd love to have you come back.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and then we start recording, and I'll ask you a few questions.
Okay.